Next up, we have two gentlemen. So the topic is safeguarding financial well-being, leveraging data analytics to combat SMS-based fraud for vulnerable populations. Very long title, but if you look at it, I think SMS-based fraud is a serious topic, and I've been in carrier services myself. So welcome with me on stage, Fawad and Damion. Stage is yours.
Test. Billions of dollars were robbed by scammers in the last few years from the most vulnerable population in the world. And this robbing was done by a process which is known as smishing, which stands for SMS plus phishing, targeting those populations. And that number has ballooned up to $8.8 billion. In the US alone, last year, $330 million were stolen just using the SMS channel. There's a 700% increase in the SMS-based fraud in the first half of 2021 alone. And this is a crime against humanity's most defenseless. These are the people who are not very tech savvy. They get robbed, money gets stolen by them, and then out of embarrassment, they don't even talk about that fraud that happened, because the thing that they fear most is, what if I tell my kids? Would they start taking over control over my financial and I will lose my agency? So that creates a repeatable process for them. And how does it work? So normally, the way smishing works is an attacker pretends to be a legitimate sender from a bank or a financial institution, sends an SMS, and initiates the attack. The victim clicks the URL without scrutinizing, because they cannot figure out those tiny differences. They will have a slight difference. Instead of an I, they will pick another Latin language character that looks closer to an I, and that website would look very identical to the bank website. The user clicks on the link, takes the victim to the malicious site, or make them call a certain number. The victim is tricked into sharing that sensitive information. Often they're hustled into it. They're given, they're threatened, they're saying, oh, this is the revenue service, and you did not pay your taxes. You need to send us $3,000 or 3,000 euros in Bitcoin right now. And what that happens, once that attack is completed, that victim is added into what is known as the suckers list. This is a good target. Hit this target again and again and again. And that is a never-ending cycle for them. Why do the banks care about this? There's, of course, direct monetary losses associated with this. In a number of jurisdictions, the banks are supposed to refund the amount if it is complained by the victim. In some cases, the victim may not complain because of the embarrassment, as I discussed earlier. It will create a mistrust of SMS by the customers. And SMS right now is one of the most important communication channels by the banks for two-factor authentication, different kind of status updates, any kind of alerts. So the last thing you want is your consumers stop trusting your channel. And then there are cost of additional security measures. Oh, you say, OK, I will stop using SMS. I'll open up a new channel. And that means now you have to invest in a net new channel. And that's just in America alone, we're talking about a total loss of $330 million. Let's talk about what we can do by partnering with BICS.
Thank you. OK, this is next. OK, good afternoon, everybody. So you're probably wondering who's BICS. I'm not sure if you're familiar with telecommunications, but BICS is a global carrier services provider, which means we are responsible for ensuring that when you actually travel to another country, or you're just trying to communicate with another person in another country, that your phone and services works as expected, smoothly. I've been listening to a lot of the presentations today, and you guys are really tech savvy. So if you were to try to make a comparison between BICS and something in a software stack, you'd think of us as kind of the middleware or the network layer. So we handle the complexities of communication protocols. We handle the data routing throughout the industry to make sure your calls, your SMS, your voice, and your data packets get where they need to be. And we ensure that it's secure. Whenever you do something, let's say in country A, and the person you're contacting, like your mother, your sister, your brother, is in country B, the network you're using isn't directly connected to the other person or directly connected to the network in the other country. You need a player like BICS in the middle. And so we're in the middle of pretty much everything you do that goes across borders in telecommunications. Our mission is essentially to ensure that communication works for everybody, wherever you are in the world, securely and also cost effectively. So there's a big democratization push from BICS as well. Now, a little bit about why BICS is actually uniquely positioned to help the type of vulnerable populations and in the scenario that Fawad just explained. We touch people like you in a lot of different ways, and we protect you without you really knowing. A company like BICS sits in the background of telecommunications. You're not going to know us like you do maybe your Vodafone, your AT&T, etc. But we serve you through those companies, and as a result, we carry pretty much today 20 to 30% of all global communications across different channels. This includes roughly 6.8 billion SMS messages annually. We talk about also protecting, in total, 617 million potential victims of the smishing campaigns that we're talking about today as well. So we have quite a huge footprint, and it means we have the ability to do something about situations like this to help protect end users. And it's actually something that's very close to our business proposition, as in we would love to see an ecosystem where the data that we all have is put to meaningful use in real life applications that actually serve the end user, as opposed to a lot of the times we talk about really tech savvy and interesting topics, but are not grounded in an end user serving approach. And that's why this one is actually quite important to me.
So what is Snowflake and what is our role in this equation? So Snowflake is a data platform. It brings the data cloud to across multiple industries, allowing customers to run all types of data analytics on a single copy of the data without creating additional copies, whether it is AI, ML, geospatial, time series, data engineering, data lake, and it is used by nearly 10,000 customers across the world, across multiple industries, and there's a lot of data sets that are shared for different reasons, data for good, commercial data sets, points of interest in the Snowflake marketplace that are being consumed all over. One of the unique capabilities of the Snowflake platform is data collaboration. In Gaia-X, we always talk about the data spaces and how there is greater need for companies to share data with each other to build data for betterment of the society. And one of the things that we talk about is, in Snowflake, all the data collaboration that takes place between two accounts is done without any copies of the data. If you want to share 100 terabytes of data between two Snowflake accounts, it is done in 1 second. It does not create any additional copies, and that unlocks a lot of new capabilities. Because when people think of data sharing, people think, oh, I'll send you some data via emails or FTP or whatever. The problem with that is you have no idea about what is happening to the data on the other side. In order to build a true data space experience, we need to have that collaborative sharing across the ecosystem. And the way I explain this is, back in the 90s, when I was a young teenager, my weekend pastime was going to a video rental store and renting a VHS tape. Some of you would remember, getting from the shop and then later on getting CDs and bringing them home. Those CDs and VHS tapes were copies of the data. What would you do? You get a copy of the data, you bring it home, you put it into the VCR, and that VCR was your ETL transformation device, and it will extract the data and project it on your screen. Sometimes you'd go to the video rental store, and there were not enough copies of the movie, so that's the scale problem. And then you were not able to do. And then other times, you bring in that CD home, and the CD had some scratches, and you put it into the CD drive, and it did not work. Those are the data quality problems that existed in that sharing mechanism. And then 20 years ago, Netflix came in. It said, there will be a single copy of the movie. You bring your own compute. You bring your own bandwidth. You watch the movie at the leisure of your home, and on top of that, I will tell you exactly how people across the world are watching movies. People who are interested in Terminator are also interested in Doom, and vice versa. So I can build interest. So I can do the same kind of collaborative experience on data as well. You were interested in this data. Let me tell you what other data sets could be interesting for you as well, for your use cases. And that is only possible when you have access to what's happening to the data on the other side. Let's talk about the solution. We described the problem domain and the two technologies, the companies that are going to be working together. Now, one of the emerging concepts that is happening in the world is this concept of data clean rooms. The phone number today that is used by everyone is more than just an identifier within the telecom ecosystem. I give my phone number to my bank for two-factor authentication. I give my phone number to my airline for flight status updates. I give it to utility provider. Almost every service that I'm using today, whether it is a ride sharing, whether it is taxi service, whatever, I'm giving my phone number there. That way, that phone number becomes a common identifier across the ecosystem. Data clean room is an emerging trend where you can combine data across two different set of organizations without revealing the underlying details. It's what you are trying to do is you're doing data sharing, and you are building this kind of secure collaboration mechanism, and it can only be possible when you are not creating copies of the data. So that this concept was built on the basis of a maths problem which was stated in 1980s. It is known as the Yao's millionaire problem. And the problem is there are two millionaires. Both of them want to know who has more money, but both of them don't want to tell each other how much money they have. So the solution is you put this amount into a neutral third party. You run the comparison with each other, who has and what not. So in this, what we can do is we can find the data of BICS with a financial services organization to start finding out which are real SMSs, financial scams.
Okay, so coming back to before I actually get into the diagram, one of the things I think it's important to telecom providers, when we talk about are not always seen as the heroes, and we don't need to be the heroes, but we would definitely like to be a part of the conversation. If you think about the presentations today, quite a few of them mentioned industry verticals where data assets could be shared. I don't think I saw telecoms listed by anybody. And it's because it's often overlooked. It's not the data that's very sexy. It's very low and technical oriented. It's network traffic, right? So nobody really cares. But we think if we actually start working together to harness this, we can do a lot more globally, for humanity. And that's the use case we have here is just one example. So what are we talking about here? I mentioned before that, as an international carrier, we already are serving you. Okay, and we see, in this case, all the SMS traffic that goes across international networks. we already provide a layer of security by trying to block, spam SMSs, smishing as well. We block quite a few, but any net is not perfect, right? As in, some do get through. I'm not sure if any of you have ever received a message saying someone's trying to get into your account, click this link now to go to your bank and check. Sometimes you're tired, sometimes your vision isn't so good so you don't pay attention, and sometimes you're just so stressed by the message itself, you quickly click it to find out whether or not you're at risk. What does that mean? It means that you have now taken a step that could potentially propagate into the scam. So the smishing itself is not the scam, it's just to harvest information about you to actually then take your account over, for example, or do a transaction on your behalf without your knowledge. And what can we do to prevent the propagation of the scam? So since we're in the middle, and we can, in our own way, detect whenever someone tries to actually smish you, instead of just stopping at saying some we block and some we don't block, we use today AI and machine learning models to actually scrutinize messages that got through, like a second look, a third pair of eyes on the messages that went through. And we can say, actually, this message got through, and in hindsight, we think it may have been malicious in its intent, and we could provide an early warning signal, for example, to a bank to say, hey, we have a database of subscribers who have received messages that we know to be smishing attempts. If you're willing to provide us with a similar, if you're willing to maintain a similar database, especially a database of your vulnerable customers, and allow us to do a simple blind query match. So if in our database we see that there's a victim of smishing, and we're able to check that that entity, that phone number, exists in yours, all we do is provide with a flag to say, maybe look at this person a little bit more carefully for the next 24 hours. Don't allow any huge transactions from this account over the next 24 hours. As in, we are no longer in control of the situation, so as a telecom provider, I can't stop the eventual fraud attack from happening, but I would love to be able to play a role in helping the banks and other institutions who can to actually prevent it from happening, and that's really what we're talking about here. We are talking about collaborating on data, but there's a way you can actually create real meaningful changes in what's happening today by sharing it in a use case like this. Okay.
So what this means is this data clean room can act as effectively a compute escrow account through which we can combine data across multiple parties, and we can start building better solutions for the society. The thing that we often forget when we are talking about the telecom ecosystem today is how pervasive and how dependent our economy is today on it. A couple of years back in Canada, one of the telcos had a 36 hours outage. For 36 hours, there was no emergency services, no fire brigade, no ambulance, no credit card services, no debit card services, no ride sharing. The economy came to a halt because just one telco was not working. In the modern economy, telecoms are as critical as electricity. And any successful data space would absolutely benefit from enriching the data through a telecom ecosystem, especially a player like BICS, who is globally systematically important because of more than 50% of the international roaming traffic going through a network like BICS. I was reading a book called Industries of the Future by Alec Ross. He was the advisor to Hillary Clinton when she was the Secretary of State 15 years ago. And he mentioned that 2,000 years ago, people used to live around water bodies, lakes, rivers, oceans, and whatnot, because that's where the opportunity was. And 200 years ago in the US, when Union Pacific was setting up railroads across the country, everyone started living around those railway lines and stations, because that's where the opportunity was. And towards the end of the 20th century, people in Africa started living around cell towers, because telecom became the oasis of opportunity. That's what we think. There is massive opportunity in this telecom data. There's massive opportunity in doing data sharing without creating additional copies. And that's what we invite you to think about and how we can build a better future for the society. Contact us on here. You can use, yes.
Or LinkedIn accounts.
And if you have any questions, we'll be here in the break. Happy to take any questions if you have. We have some time.
Seems like it was clear for everybody. Okay, hopefully it was interesting as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot for this quite tangible example. I mean, actually, funnily enough, we have been discussing yesterday with some other people about the difficulties of SMS and smishing and all of that, like how to take care of rock operators and things, and so it was really interesting.